Yeah. Okay. I think we probably are recording, hopefully. Um, just to make sure, I want to just stop this and see whether we are recording.
Yes, it says you are.
Oh, yeah, we are. Good.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. So, what I was about to say was that about 35 years ago, he introduced his party named the Justice Party, meaning that is what he was going to deliver. And it took a long while for people to really comprehend the message because, they have been so much, if you like, indoctrinated by the leadership of the last 20, 30 years, who were both the opposition and the one in government, totally and utterly corrupt, and also touting democracy as their way of doing things. But of course, it was all a show. And I'll talk about it now in a little while. Okay, so let's go back to my screen again. And we'll start off by looking at our agenda for today. Again, as my agenda always seems to cover a heck of a lot, so I'll talk fairly fast on these issues. And we'll talk about Imran Khan's vision for Pakistan when he came in, and he's been in power for 2 years now. And what he found in Pakistan was a complete and total and utter destroyed state by the previous leaders. Destroyed in the sense of having borrowed to the hilt and made it totally impoverished, and completely accepting the diktats of all the powers that be around them. So with no sort of at all sense of pride or dignity or anything like that, they sold that, these previous leaders. And that's why his party started to sort of talk about accountability. Now, before I sort of go into that, I just want to look at this one, my reason for this talk. Now, I'm interested in Pakistan because I spent about 12 years over there doing a project. I went from Switzerland and did a technical project for them on aviation, introducing some crew scheduling for their airline, and which was in a mess at that time. So that was one of the reasons why I'm talking about it, because I know the people involved, and I can tell you a little bit about how I sort of picked up all sorts of information of the ruling elite that was there and how it worked. And of course, my other talks you know all about already, which address the issues of humanity in a big way. We talked about China, we talked about Elon Musk, and we talked about and this one here, Imran Khan, and there was one other one, just thoughts on post-pandemic world. So the accountability of past leaders, Nawaz Sharif and Zardari, both of them were totally and utterly corrupt, and they were in charge of Pakistan for 12 to 25 years. One belonging to the Muslim League Party, this is his party, and the other one People's Party, that's Benazir Bhutto's party. Now, what they have done is they had an understanding between each other as to basically saying, look, while I'm in government, I will loot the country, and you can make all the noises, and when you come into power, you can loot the country and we'll make a lot of noises. And the cases that were drawn up in their times are the ones that, in fact, Imran Khan is pursuing in courts. Now, what are the things that we're going to talk about? FATF, this is the terrorist list, which is a very, dangerous list to be on, because the whole world considers your country to be part of the terrorist thing here. That is because of all the money laundering that went in, and there was no accountability for where that money went, and this sort of thing is, they thought the money went in for terrorist activities. And then, of course, there was a big debt that he came in that he had to sort of do something about. It was mountainous, and most of the money that came in revenues for the country were going away in debt servicing. And there was, of course, the mafia as well. The mafia being the ruling class and the establishment, who made not only the the legislation, but also the procedures to sort of support their activities. And they nominated their own people and all these checks and balances that were supposed to provide for a democracy. So that's how the corruption was so in depth that when he found that it's taking him a bit of time to do that sort of cleaning out. Okay, now that's one big major part of his exercise, which is hindering the progress that he likes to make. And but he's making nevertheless progress, bringing a lot of social programs for upliftment of the poor sections of society, and of course employment, very big problem of unemployment. So he's introducing this industrial sort of schemes and agricultural sort of schemes, and generic power is also a very, very big problem, big shortages. So he's doing something along that, and we'll talk about that a bit more. And at the moment he came in, the simplest thing he could do was to address the climate issue. Now, one of the things that he did, when he took last 2019, he addressed the UN General Assembly. He was the first person that I've heard address the UN General Assembly with issues that were real, not basically rhetoric. And he was urging a lot of those people as to what needs to be done. So I will go into that a bit more. Okay, then on the international front, this big relationship that they've got, which is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, it's part of that Belt and Road Initiative that I keep mentioning about. So that is very much the lifeline for Pakistan. And of course, it has to deal with the strategic and the threat from India, Pakistan, Kashmir, and Ladakh, and therefore regional alliances. So I'll quickly go through that. Okay, this is the address that he did. I'll leave this little link with you so you can listen to it. It's about 50 minutes long. But you can see he addresses very, very crucial issues, which is to do with climate. He says we've got to do something about climate. We can't just ignore it because you think by ignoring it it's going to go away. It's not. So we have to be realistic about it and be able to do something about it. And it has to be on a multilateral basis. You can't go it alone. You have to have an understanding with all the other countries what measures to adopt. Then, of course, he brought up this question of money laundering by leaders, because a lot of thing that happens is that a lot of poor countries, they have leaders who come in and steal the wealth of the country. We've seen that over a period of time. And what he was saying was essentially, he said, look, the international rules are there for drug money coming into countries, money coming in for terrorist activities, but no regulations in the Western world that prohibits stolen money coming in that impoverishes the poor countries. So he said, UN has got to do something about it, the world has got to do something about it. A very sort of, good message, of course. Then, of course, he addressed the notion of Islamophobia, because he said, look, Islam has been equated with terrorism. Now, that's a very sort of wrong narrative. And the people in the West, being not too aware of Islam and what it is, have thought that this was the message of Islam, terrorist activities and violence and so on. And he says, absolutely wrong. And these are because the vested interests of countries that help to promote this, mostly by the despotic countries of the Middle East, who have in fact told the West that if you don't support us, the fundamentalists will come in and take over and make life hell for you. So the West, knowingly or unknowingly, they said, okay, you stay there, you keep these people down, we'll support you. While these people were looting and, of course, not making progress, bringing in any type of progress in those countries. So even today, we've got leaderships of that sort. And that is one of the complaints that he had. And he said, we need to sort of take action on that. And of course, his final message was on Kashmir, because India has turned into a Nazi state, believing in the Hindu supremacy, the Aryan supremacy of the Nazis, as it were, and everybody is less and therefore needs to be eliminated, like the Holocaust but like the Jews. So that's a message that he was saying at that level at the UN Assembly, and Kashmir is part of that equation because there are 8 million people who have been sort of put into lockdown, a severe lockdown, which means it's not like our lockdown. They don't have any communications, they don't have any sort of opportunity to go outside, and there are 900,000 troops of India making sure that nobody gets out of their houses. So it's really so worse than concentration camps. So you can see India has lost its moral high ground and secularist activities and democracy identities and all that because they have been taken over by this RSS philosophy, which is a Nazi philosophy. Okay, what has Pakistan done? This is the contentious area, Jammu and Kashmir. At the time of partition, this area was left to the whims of the local rulers to accede to one of the other countries. And because Kashmir had a Hindu ruler with a Muslim majority, he sort of sided with India, with the connivance of Nehru and with Mountbatten's wife, Idmida, and so on. Nevertheless, it's a contentious issue, and it's coming up to the fore now. The new map now is this, where in fact Kashmir is shown as being part of India, of Pakistan now, which is a very, very sort of, if you like, important move on the part of Pakistan, telling the people of Kashmir, you are part of us now. It's not just a contentious territory. We claim that territory now. So that's quite a different sort of, position to adopt now. And with China there, right up there in the Ladakh area, India is in a sort of a quandary as to how to pursue the future of the Kashmiris. Okay, Imran Khan's message when he came in is Naya Pakistan. He says New Pakistan. And he wants to go back to the original sort of father of the nation, Jinnah, who basically was saying, we want a country which is a secular country, which enables every religion to practice, in freedom and so on. So, but then, of course, very soon, what happened after his death was that some of the landowners took control and started to make changes to the constitution. Anyway, some little things about Pakistan. It's the second largest Muslim country with about 200 million people. Sizable. It's the only nuclear power which is Muslim. Strategically, very, very important. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And this 45th in the largest GDP. At the moment, it's still a very poor country. Purchasing power still imports a lot of stuff. Budget, high enough, but the army is the one that is ensuring the security of Pakistan, let me put it that way. Because the politicians have been corrupt and have been able to sell away not only the assets of the country, but also the allegiances to the principles of Pakistan. So this basically is that. And this him coming into power 2 years ago, and of course, on the back of a lot of young people supporting him and his vision. And his vision being to deliver justice to the country and remove the corrupt leaders and hold them accountable. That was the message. And he's on that path now. So along with the other visions that he has, he wants to strengthen the federation because it's a federation, it's got states and they have their own little powers. Right now, there are two states. One state which is not part of his government, which is Sindh, but Punjab is with the ruling party, which is Imran's party, and the KPK, which is up north, and also Baluchistan. And he wants to bring in social services. The social services, the message that he's starting to impart is rather in a very simple way. He says when Islam first came and the Prophet delivered his message, his main concern was, of course, one thing was to believe in one God, which was his earlier part of the message. And then when he started to see he's had a following, then he set up a state and the basic structure of the state was a welfare state. So you could say that was the first welfare state which gave protection to women, the widows, the orphans, and made the state responsible for their well-being and to take care of them. So the notion of justice was one of the things that not only did he sort of preach, but he delivered, like Elon Musk, a vision that he's prepared to deliver on. So Muhammad delivered on, not just preached. So he's bringing these social services to that end of making, helping the poorer sections of society, giving focus to technology coming into agriculture and water. Again, I'll talk about it a bit, and security concerns as well. So this was a vision, and this is something that he's working on. As soon as he came in, one of the first things he did, because he talked about climate, he started planting trees, and his target is 10 billion trees all over the Pakistan. Earlier to him becoming prime minister, he had one state which voted for him, which was Northwest. That was the frontier region there, Pakhtunkhwa, and he already planted a billion trees there. So he's extended that program to the whole of the country now, so that he says climate, and we are so many dependent on it. We want to plant trees, and he's underway on that. He's got the schools actively participating in planting trees. Here's a little picture. That's the little job that they have to do. And he also started to conserve water. There's a lot of water, if you see in the next thing, gave floods. When the Indus sort of flooded, when the glaciers started to melt, it flooded, and it destroyed a lot of crops. And in order to sort of stop that happening, these dams are being built now. And these dams are the ones that you can see on the in these areas here. Okay, I'll show you a bit better on that. Anyway, this is a picture of the dam. The dam not only conserves water, but it provides hydroelectricity. So he's getting the Chinese to come in and build that as well. Now, this is the thing about the dams, how many are proposed at the moment. Right now, the water is, the one that's being built is this one. It'll take about 4 or 5 years to build this. Of course, India is complaining, and because they said, oh, this is a disputed land. But this is under control of Pakistan. They said, this is our country anyway, why should you object? And one of the reasons why Pakistan is very crucially interested in Kashmir, not only because of the injustice that has been done at the time of partition, but because a lot of these water resources, the sources of the Indus, they emanate from this area. So, India could very well block it, and there's a water treaty which is put together but not adhered to, and that's a big area of dispute. But now with China there so close, I think those things, that the dynamics of that area is changing very much. Now there's the other sort of things as well. I won't go into that. You can look at this leisure at which phase at what sort of dam is that. Now this is the Punjab. It should be Punjab. Sorry, the governor houses. When Imran Khan came in, he said we don't want these palatial buildings to house a governor or a prime minister. So he said that was the legacy of the British. When they came in, they wanted to have big sort of mansions as a symbol of power. But we don't have to follow that. So he said the governor doesn't need to have a big house. He can go and live in a small house. So he's making that into a museum, which I think is a good idea. He's done the same thing to the prime minister's house, a grand house for Islamabad. Now he's made that. He says, I'm not going to live there. I'm going to live in my own house, and I'll make this into a university, a high-tech university. So you can see the way that he's thinking. He says we have to move away from the old mindset and create something new. And of course, they're doing a lot of these cooperative projects with China, and China finds Pakistan to be a very reliable partner and a very strategic partner. And we'll see the Belt and Road is one of those cooperations that is really making a difference. Okay, the CPEC, what is it going to deliver on? It gives us security, it gives Pakistan security and safety, political stability, national integration, avoids insurgency in the Baluchas because every province will have some sort of thing to gain. Then responsive government, basic facilities, and investors will have confidence. And then all these particular, nice things to be able to deliver and committed to the government is. So CPEC, the future, CPEC is a lifeline, as I said, to Pakistan. Is a development which has a long faced economic constraints limiting its growth. China, the next door neighbor, is well on its way to becoming the world's largest economy. And of course, the world offers relevant precedents in what happens to countries in a similar situation. Essentially saying if you're next to a very growing economy and a big economy, you can also gain. And here it is, an example of Mexico being next to USA has put on 500% increase in its commerce because of USA. And of course, Turkey also is another example where it has a tremendous amount of increase in its GDP because it was part of the customs union of the EU. So EU being a very prosperous bloc meant that Turkey had a very good market for its goods. So two examples, Mexico and Turkey, and now Pakistan, being adjacent practically to China, will also similarly have a tremendous amount of growth happening. Now, these are some figures about some of the expenditures that are already committed, which is big money for Pakistan. And these are the various ways that are being spent on. These are energy projects. This is for speedy rail links. And then this big port that is going to be developing. So plenty of figures for various projects. Now that's the Belt and Road. You can see how strategically Pakistan is located here. For China, especially the western region of China, it links it up the Middle East and to Africa very easily. This this chart you've seen many times. I've shown you. This one also, just highlighting the sea routes a bit, and also indicating that this is one of the areas where you see you've got these bottlenecks here, where China fears that if it can be blocked, and its access to oil and all that will be blocked. So this link with Pakistan is a short link for it to make headway. And of course, then you've got all these access to Africa. There, another picture of China, this Western China. This is the poor region of China. That's where the Uyghurs are, and we have a lot of, press coverage of that, of how things are going very bad for them. It's a very poor area. There's hardly any links there for commerce. But with this link here and with the other BRI, this area is going to improve, and that's why they're educating the local people so that they can man the factories and so on. But of course, the way they're doing it may not necessarily be everybody's cup of tea. This is the CPEC progress to date. They've already got practically so much of it already underway, under construction. About a quarter of that has also been completed. And in addition to this, a further phase is being introduced, which is going to bring in more commitment on the part of China and Pakistan to do other projects. Now, these are the two thieves, if you like, who have looted Pakistan, and one of them is taking refuge here in London. He's got about 64 properties, and he lives in Mayfair. And he got out of Pakistan by producing a fraudulent medical service which says that he's dying, and his blood platelets have gone to zero practically, and therefore the government says, oh, okay, you can go for 4 weeks for treatment. Of course, he's not coming back. But now if he doesn't come back, he's going to be an absconder and a criminal. This fellow has stayed back thinking that he would buy his way out, and we'll have to see. He's in hospital as usual. Anybody who's caught go into hospital, So they've got all these tricks up their sleeves. But this guy, I've met him, when he wasn't the president and in power, he was, in fact, before I met him, he was just the son of a theater. And he used to sell tickets on pavement. Now he's the owner of the Portman Hotel in Churchill. It's worth several $billion pounds, and he has 34 sugar mills, and he's got 1,000 acres of sugarcane arable land. So you can see the measure of looting that these people who have done. These smiles. I don't know how they can do it. This is the Panama Papers highlighting that amongst all the other leaders who are also on that bad list, there's Nawaz Sharif as well here. Here he is with his children. He lives in Mayfair, and his children, they say we are not Pakistani. And everybody asks him, where did you get the money from? He says, no, we don't. We had it. They can't justify where that money came from. Clear case. And we have our rules over here, which are quite astonishingly lax when it comes to money coming in from abroad. You've got drug money coming in, terrorist money coming in, that gets blocked very quickly. But when stolen money comes in, like a lot of money has come in from Russia, it sort of gets, into the city of London. And city of London's big sort of expertise lies in sort of handling this money and farming it out to tax shelters so it can't be traced. So that's why a lot of these people, put their money in various other places, like in Panama. They make it so intricate, the city of London, so you can't, know who's owning what, and you can't access that money. Now, these previous leaders, when they left government, they took so many loans over here. The borrowing went up enormously for the country, which is suffering at the moment. All these 20 years, they have been looting, but on the last, year of the government, they excelled themselves. So accountability is one of those things that Imran Khan is promising. He says, even if it's within my own government, if ministers are shown to be corrupt, I'm going to, make them accountable. On regional issues, this Afghanistan has been a big problem for the whole world. And Pakistan, in fact, has been the biggest sufferer, because when that 9/11 took place and bombing of Afghanistan started, USA told Pakistan, we'll bomb you out of to Stone Age days if you don't cooperate with us. So they were coerced into sort of fighting a war on behalf of USA. And they suffered losses of 70,000 casualties, dead people in Pakistan because of that war, and over 100 billion losses in commerce. That's just the start of it. And of course, the institutions and everything was corrupt. Now, this is another thing about the investigation that is going on at the moment. Foreign policy very much to do with China now, become a bit more assertive in saying, okay, we are going to help our friends. And one of his friends is Pakistan, and Pakistan is taking heart on that. Of course, the other one that has gone into that camp, gone into the China camp, is Iran, because they have found that they have been brought down to their knees by Western sanctions. Europe couldn't help Iran because America threatened even Europe and their companies with sanctions, so they couldn't do very much. So the only savior, if you like, was China, who came to the rescue of Iran. And of course, along with Iran will be other countries who have also been sanctioned. Now, Kashmir conflict it has this history of how it came about, but right now it is under lockdown with 900 troops to do that, and the India government doesn't know what to do with it. They've got boxed themselves into a corner there. And there's going to be a bit of an agreement between the USA and the Taliban. And the Afghan government is starting to also get into the picture. Some dialogue is starting to take place. So America is going to leave, it says, most of its troops from Afghanistan, because that's what Trump promised. We'll have to see. how quickly this is done. But Pakistan is helping USA in that regard to bring about peace in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. Now, Iran is again one of those countries which is at loggerheads with Saudi Arabia, because Iran is Shia and Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and historically they have been enemies. But this particular government of Saudi Arabia, led by Prince Salman, has gone to really town by starting this Yemen war and doing a lot of other nasty things. But fortunately, his power is waning because the oil sort of prices have gone down, and of course, thanks to Mr. Elon Musk, we'll have electric cars and maybe get out of fossil fuels very quickly. In which case, all these despots and monarchies will be brought down to their knees, hopefully. Now, these are social programs. This helps the poorest women across the country. He gives an allowance of 2,000 rupees, which may not be a lot, but it at least is kitchen money for these poor women. So about 7 million of those have been helped because of that. And it's already underway. This is another scheme for helping the youth. And he's allocated a fair amount of money to help there, so that low-cost loans will be given to youth to start their businesses and help them in any other way. Now, Prince William and, of course, what's her name? Kate, went to Pakistan not too long ago, last year, I think, October 2019. And they have received very well, and they have come out, with very good comment about the security aspects of the country and how tourists can go there safely. Social programs, that's another, and he's got another program building 5 million low-cost houses. And he's going to do it with the help of the Chinese, because they've got the technology and being able to bring in vast construction projects underway. There's a show about housing. He says housing will no longer be affordable just for the rich, because that was the case, because they had access to mortgages, this, that, or the other. But now Imran Khan says, no, we are going to target the poor people, and so that they can acquire housing. And he's also introduced a health card, because there's no sort of national program like our NHS over here. And what it does is it helps the poor families to have up to about quite a lot of 7 lakhs of rupees, which is probably easily about $10,000 of medical attention given to them or with this card. So it's a very, very good help, and he's going to extend that scheme to the rest of the country. It's only operational in one of the states. That's the sort of card again being issued to various people. So they're already underway, all these programs. And this is a shelter for the destitute. There are a lot of people sleeping on the roads, like what we see in our roads over here sometimes, but we had lots more. And he has provided shelter homes for them so that they can spend nights, in these at least clean quarters, and gives them food. This is their shelters. So big step in looking after the poor. Now the CPEC route, this is Western China, and these are the sort of ways, the points that it has gone through. It's just a little schematic, but you can see the distances that are covered. These are big, big, big sort of highways, and of course this it doesn't show the. This shows the rail links as well, and the highways, and the energy projects. Economic zones as well here, the black ones. So real sort of, if you like, effort being put in. One of the biggest shortcomings of the country is that the power projects are being initiated in a big way, because there were a lot of outages, because the previous leaders, they stole money and never built. And even if they built it with such bad sort of contracts that the country had to pay enormous amounts of costs because of the commissions that they sort of these leaders took. So there is a new emphasis on and having agreements with the energy providers, which I think is going to be already implemented now. Yeah, that's basically another Belt and Road picture. Now, in order to sort of offset this relationship between Pakistan and China, India and Iran at that time, they're friendly because Iran was supplying oil to India. But then when sanctions came in on Iran, the supply sort of got cut, although they got some sort of waiver here. But nevertheless, all the other companies who were responsible for building this port with Iran, they managed to get out of it. Iran said, "Look, if you're not going to build, we are going to, drop you." So they dropped India because India had two purposes. One was to sort of go and access the Central Asian states and also access Iran. Afghanistan apart from Iran. With this going away now, and Iran and soon Afghanistan and Pakistan, all under the Chinese umbrella, means that India is going to be isolated. Now, this is an interesting chart to say where each of the countries stands with regard to some of these movements, if you like, the Taliban-like movements. There are various names here. And depending on the color, it means that they either get support from the country, like Pakistan would not support any of this. It has its own sort of fights here with green, which they are the good people they consider to be supportive of their activities in the country. And the bad ones are the red ones. And this applies to all the other countries over here, how they relate to each of these projects. Something for you to look at. This is just giving you an idea about how the exports and imports have fared as time goes by. Arms export to Pakistan has diminished. You can see the red practically disappearing. And China has started to export arms to Pakistan. So China has become a very close ally. This is also the GDP impact and the GDP growth. It has started to grow a lot more. This one, I don't know whether I can see that. Yeah, there we are. The green one is Pakistan, starting to do better. And then India is that one, and then China over there. So basically, they're all doing better as time goes on. This I thought I would show you because it's a sort of a diagram which tells you the roots of all these, the oil, the drugs, the weapons, and the goods. So you can see at leisure where they're coming from and where they're going. See? And all these bomb things are areas of conflict. So interesting for you to look at your leisure. And Pakistan, of course, you can see, it's providing this through this route coming from abroad into Pakistan, into Afghanistan. It's going through Pakistan. These are the Western sort of effort of fighting in Afghanistan. They had the route through here. And of course, drugs are coming from Afghanistan back into the market here. The Taliban, before the invasion came about, when they were in power, they prohibited the growth of opium. It's only after the invasion came about, then to make money, they started to grow drugs again and market them. Okay, there's a bit more detailed thing about some of the CPEC. It's a pretty comprehensive type of thing there. You can see investment in, on the port and the road, the metro, the energy, and all that. And you can see it's giving an infrastructure of immense proportions. I think I'll move this picture again here, back to this. This is where the big activity is right now. It's going to become a super port, and a lot of money is being spent over here because it's become a crucial part of for China and for Pakistan. And these things here, these are the ones, the power plants, the wind, the solar energy thing, the solar here, the wind farms here, the rail links and the auto links. So immense amount of activity. This is just showing a little bit of the old picture of unrest. It's an earlier one. I won't go into that because that is something we don't need to talk about. One other thing that Pakistan did when Imran Khan did, rather, when he came, you know, the Sikhs, the Mecca and Medina of the Sikhs. The Mecca was, I suppose, was here in Amritsar, and the Medina was up here in Lahore, in a place called Kartarpur, about 4 kilometers away. And there was no way that the poor Sikhs living in this area could go to their, pay homage to their leader, Guru Nanak. But when Imran Khan came, he said, look, we'll give you access, we'll build a road and we'll improve your monuments here. And he won the heart of 30 million Sikhs overnight all over the world by doing that. Of course, India didn't like that very much, but they couldn't do very much about it. Remember this picture? I just thought I might show it to you. That's that same lady holding her picture. And this is Malala. You remember her? Again, one of those people who were shot by the Taliban because she was promoting education for the girls in the northern areas. She's well now, has a role all over the world to encourage women's education, girls' education. Now, this is the Ladakh area in contention. Now, this is a bit more detailed, but let's look at the larger. This is where the Ladakh area is. Vital to the sources of all the water. And China is sitting there now, and India is terrified and asking for help. But it was unjust occupation of India anyway. This is China has already taken this part here. This is part of current Kashmir. Pakistan has control already of that portion. Now Indian Union is becoming divided into two here. One is called Jammu and Kashmir, and this one's called Ladakh. I think China sooner or later will influence this area a lot more. So the people of Kashmir will have another ally on their side. Sorry, that's another detail. Okay, I think that's all I want to say today on that. Let's switch over to our Q&A. I'll stop sharing the screen. I think I did. Okay, here we are. And then let me... Can you hear me, all of you? What's happened here? Oh, there we are. Okay, I think you have your own mics. I'll mute you anyway. Unmute you. Okay, if you have any questions, go ahead.
Yes, Shafiq, I've got a couple of things I wondered if you could clarify. So
I was expecting something from you. Go ahead.
so you said, am I right in understanding that? So the map of Pakistan, as redrawn, includes part of Kashmir, and then there's the other disputed part, which India is messing around with. Now, what I can't understand is, you know, in the past it used to be Azad Kashmir. Was that all of Kashmir, including the, I know it was always disputed, but is there, so the bit that's become green and part of
Yeah.
Pakistan,
Azad,
was that the,
yeah,
carry
Azad
on.
Kashmir is the part that Pakistan soldiers walked in when Indian soldiers walked into Kashmir. They took
Yes.
a strip of the lower part of or the western part of Kashmir, but the northern part they occupied, that became Baltistan. That is all part of Azad Kashmir.
And the
Whereas,
Kashmiris are happy with that.
sorry.
The Kashmiris are happy to be part of Pakistan, are
Well,
they?
at the moment they have a lot more freedom. Let me put it that way than what they have in Indian Kashmir. And Pakistan has always asked for the plebiscite, which the UN agreed that they would hold, and India agreed that they would hold, but they went back on their word. And now we have a very unhappy population in Kashmir for the past 70 years now, even, I think 60 years, who have been let down and given, and although they had at the time of partition a special status given to them, which was to essentially say that nobody can come into the state which is from the rest of India to buy land, which meant that the demographics of Kashmir was to be maintained. But now with the resolution that has been changed in India, which was a change to the constitutional clause, they have removed that special status and virtually has made it part of India with no special status given to Kashmir, which means now anybody can go into Kashmir and buy land and then change the demographics of Kashmir. And if they then hold a plebiscite, then of course, you know, the plebiscite will go in India's way. See? So it's basically.
But presumably, sorry, so then presumably, but the Pakistanis can't go and buy land in the disputed area, it's just the Indians.
No, the two parts. You see, one is the Pakistan occupied
Yes.
Kashmir, as India calls it, but Pakistan calls it Azad Kashmir. And you've got the Jammu and Kashmir, which is under Indian control, which has its own leadership and so on. And then, of course, there's a contentious area called Ladakh on top of Kashmir, or part of Kashmir as well, and which claims also part of Pakistan's Baltistan area, you know. So, but these claims are based on the old lines that were drawn at the on the days of the British Empire, where the lines were basically not controllable in any way, but just drawn and say, well, this is all our territory and this is not your, somebody else's territory. So it's very questionable whether those lines have very much meaning. But then, you know, each country uses those lines as saying, well, it suits us, so we'll keep those lines, you know. And that's what India is saying. We claim all that area because, you know, McMahon in the 18th century went and drew some lines with nobody's approval anyway, and that became the line for India.
Yeah, yes.
Make claims. So that's why Pakistan has redrawn the lines now and has claimed all of Kashmir and says this is all our territory now.
Interesting. And then just one other thing. So one of the maps you had, it referred to Pakistan as the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Now, when Pakistan was created in 1947, I don't think it was called an Islamic Republic because, as you say, Jinnah didn't want he wanted a secular country. So I see that, you know, it's become more sort of Muslim in that respect. But I think I mentioned a program I had watched on the blasphemy laws in Pakistan, which are very extreme at the moment. And they were trying to relax them a bit. But then when Imran Khan came in, he didn't do it because I think he does have, there are internal sort of battles, dare I say, between the extreme Muslims, who there are many in Pakistan, and the sort of secular, or not the crazy religious people. So I thought I'm going to watch his speech about Islamophobia, but I found that really, I think I mentioned it to you, the program on the BBC on the blasphemy laws in Pakistan were actually really scary. It was, oh my goodness, there are a lot of people who are signing up to that extreme aspect of Islam. And I don't know, how do you think Imran Khan is going to be able to deal with that?
Yeah. Well, I think don't forget the blasphemy laws, even in UK, are just only removed in the 1960s. So these blasphemy laws have been in people's sort of constitutions and their history. Uh, but when the time is right, I think they'll be removed. Now, in the case of Pakistan, the Supreme Court threw out the accusation of Aisha Bibi, who was accused of this blasphemy laws, and the Supreme Court then released her. So what has been happening in Pakistan as far as the blasphemy laws are concerned is they have lost the spirit of what the law is supposed to say, but use it for their own particular agendas. So local sort of, if you like, quarrels are settled using this law to their advantage. So Imran Khan wants to sort of change it, but the country at the moment is undergoing severe economic issues right now. So he's dealing with that first, but I think he'll no doubt come to the revision of these laws, because that's like, hornet's nest. If he starts to shake it, it's going to sort of sting everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wondered, Shafiq, what's the situation with Kurdish people in Pakistan?
Kurdish?
Yes. I've heard that there's Kurdish people living in Pakistan. Are they...
I didn't know that there were Kurdish people as such, but you have in the frontier region of Pakistan a lot of people who look like the Middle Eastern people. I'm not sure whether they claim themselves to be Kurds or what, but certainly they're Muslim, and they are, I think, generally classed as basically people of the frontier. And
I think I heard that they came from Iran, and maybe in the 1990s, I heard some program, and they went to live in Pakistan. So I wondered.
yeah, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that, Giselle. But I know that you've got these are tribal people, and they're very close communities in many ways. They have their own, culture, and they have their own way of living. A bit like that, the Afghans, they're also very dependent, but very sort of tribal, and don't want to bring about change too quickly. And that's why I think USA got stuck in Afghanistan, because it thought it was just a matter of building a few schools and that was it. But unfortunately, even after 20 years of war, it found that it's not just as simple as that. Yeah, George.
Okay, see you next week.
See you. Okay, you wanted to go.
Yeah, I've got dentist now.
Have a good sort of time. Take care.
Bye.
You.
Bye, everyone.
Hi. Incidentally, I'll be delivering this lecture on the 4th of September as well. It'll be the same material, so you don't necessarily have to attend that, because you'll be hearing the same thing. I'll be doing that to a larger crowd of U3A. Yeah, Pam, you've got a question.
How has the COVID situation affected Pakistan?
Oh, I must say, Pakistan is one of the 4 countries in the world who has dealt with it in a manner which kept the deaths very low, and I think it has been commended for that. And if you look at the sister country India, I mean, it has been handled the worst way possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've got it hasn't peaked as yet, and you've got millions of people affected, and I don't know how many have died. And this is apart from the idea of how good their statistics are, because I can't rely on anything that India says, because the government has bought up every institution, and it's corrupted every institution. So there's no sort of objectivity left in India.
Thanks. That's good.
Actually, oh yeah, sorry. I just said Giselle was right. I just looked it up. So about 4,000 Kurds moved to Pakistan after the Gulf War.
Oh.
Oh, really? And where did they settle up there? North?
It just says they went to Pakistan. It doesn't actually say exactly where they went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when Afghan sort of problem was there, when the Soviets were there, there were 3 million Afghans who came into Pakistan.
Yes.
And they were refugees, and poor Pakistan had to look after them. There was some little help from the UN, but not much.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Shafiq, it says they're in Islamabad.
What about Islamabad?
The Kurds were based in Islamabad.
No, that's strange, because I've lived in Islamabad, or Rawalpindi,
Yeah, but
is the sister town.
Yes, so this is 1990s. No, it's after the Gulf War, actually. Yeah. I didn't know that. Thank you, Giselle.
Yeah, I heard something about it on the radio. There was some program about Kurds.
Well, that's interesting to know. I didn't know that at all myself. Well, we have, I think, quite a number of still foreign people in Pakistan, because when the refugees came in from Afghanistan, they were in millions, and they spread all over the country, but mostly went into south, to Karachi, because they went into the trucking business. Because Afghanistan is a landlocked country, all the stuff goes from Karachi port to Afghanistan. So you can understand the Afghan sort of refugees, they automatically went into the trucking business, and they ply that trade, and it's their sort of livelihood.
Well, my friend who is from Iran originally, and she's likes to go back to Iran to visit her family in Tehran, and she's told me that there are so many refugees, many of them Afghans, who are in Iran. She says there's a lot of problems through all of the refugees, and a lot of can you call it racism? But she said a lot of the Iranian people treat them horribly. It's from all over, not just Afghanistan, from a lot of the surrounding countries. She said it causes a lot of terrible problems there.
Well, that whole region, you see, Afghanistan and then Iraq and Syria, I mean, they have been destroyed. Their societies have been destroyed. The people have been killed by the millions, and all because of what? I mean, the good question to ask. Fundamentally, it's a question of power, and the power coming to people through oil and its wealth. Ideology comes second, but they use ideology to promote their cause, which again has to do with power, So, astonishing sort of failure of foreign policy of the West in general, but in particular USA. I think USA has fallen down on the job miserably, responsible for millions of deaths. And of course, we can say, well, Assad, in Syria, he's responsible. The Russians are responsible. Saddam was responsible. We can put all sorts of blame on somebody else or the other. But before that, those areas were relatively peaceful. People were living. And even we had a lady from Syria who used to regularly go backwards and forward to Syria because she used to come to my lectures or my talks. And she loved the place because she says it's so good to be able to have the environment. And what happened was, of course, a power play took place, and it's destroyed. The whole Middle East has been destroyed.
Yeah, it has.
And history will point to the real culprits, and they'll be lined up with Hitler and, of course, Genghis Khan and Mussolini all in the same dock, because they are responsible for destroying lives, destroying societies, destroying, values, monuments, lyrics, historical sort of things. Destruction of, we don't hear too much about it because we get very sanitized news here. But there you are, All we see is, of course, influx of refugees coming through. And that, of course, is blamed on the poor immigrants. They say, oh, they're coming in for a good life. Oh, hello. They're coming in for a good life. They had a good life already in their own countries, So really, I mean, what everybody in the world is looking for is justice, actually.
Yes, but again, the way you started your talk on Imran Khan, I think that, I mention this pretty much every week. So as you said, with all the Pakistani leaders who stole so much money, and we have that in all of the developing world, don't we? I always talk about Africa. They do that. So, because they are stealing from their own people all the time. The people are so poor, they've got nothing. So I really feel very strongly about that because...
Yeah, no, I agree.
So do I.
I agree
because I'm from South Africa, as you know, and I'm so heart-sore to what's been happening to South Africa, and also very much in what was Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. It's terrible. All of these leaders have come in and they've just embezzled all of this money. It's heartbreaking. These are countries which were thriving. They'd had so many resources.
If you go to a poor country who's barely managed to survive, and they offer some little support to a leader who they think will bring about some measure of, control, and then keep that guy in power, means that he is able to loot with your support, in fact. So I would simply look at and say that if one has the power, as most of the rich countries have the power, they should be able to, support or not support the right type of leadership in these countries. But if you support the despots and the corrupt, then of course, they do it. And there are baddies in every society. If you pick the bad eggs and put them in control, you'll get a bad result,
Shafiq, from what I see, is that quite a lot of these leaders, when they start off, they seem like they're good guys, like Mugabe. Well, when I read and I hear everything that happened when Mugabe first came into power, he was fine. He did quite a lot of good things. But gradually, maybe power went to his head. I don't know. But I mean, what a vile, horrible monster he turned out to be. And, I think the South African, after Nelson Mandela was, of course, wonderful. But after Mandela, the same sort of thing happened. The people that came in looked as if they were Zuma as well. Zuma looked like he was quite a good guy to start with for the first 2-3 years, and then gradually, I don't know what it is, they embezzle all the money. South Africa is now so poor, so awful, that they're having outages in electricity because even the power companies don't have enough money to run. It's terrible. You live in South Africa and you're hearing all the time, from this time to that time, there will be no power. It's appalling.
Yeah, the sort of thing that I've seen happen time and again in every country is that the institutions that are supposed to have the checks and balances are first of all attacked and destroyed. And we keep mum in the West when we are seeing this happen. Because we want our boys, he's a nasty guy, but he's our guy. And he can do his work without the checks and balances of the institution because he has destroyed them, which is what these people, Zardari and Nawaz Sharif, also did. They destroyed the institutions by nominating their own people and making legislation which is, partial to them, and having their own people at every level of society because they partake of the corrupt money that is made. So that's why, you get now and then a leader who comes in with enough guts to be able to address, and that leader was able to address because he can stand in front of the UN and talk in a language which the world understands. When Nawaz Sharif went to the White House, all he could say was 3 words or whatever, and he had a little chit in front of him where he had to read out. I mean, such incompetent and greedy people we are supporting. And we are supporting to let them destroy the institutions, destroy the country, simply because they say, yes sir, 3 bags full, sir. That's the only reason they get the support.
Yes, Shafiq, but I feel, it's, in a way, to what extent do we owe it to ourselves? If it's my family, it's my responsibility first. Now, so all the countries that fought for their freedoms and independence and got them, I can't think of many who've been that successful afterwards because they've all been run by crooks and whatever. I think we keep blaming the West or the developed world, but in a way, those countries shouldn't be beholden to the West because they've all got enough themselves. And if they dealt with it sensibly, Pakistan is a rich country, but why it just keeps getting, has got to the state it has, and with all those people in it, I don't understand. So I do think the Pakistanis have to take responsibility like the South Africans do, and all the countries. And then you shouldn't weaken ourselves and then be answerable to the West. We can't keep blaming the West. It's our responsibility.
That's why the reason of my talk is because of that. If you get a leader like Imran Khan who's coming in,
excellent,
who then sort of changes the destiny of a country, like Quaid-e-Azam Jinnah did that when he sort of was alive. So if you get the right leadership, who is able to stand up and say no to the powers that be, because, the usual accusation was, do more from the West, do more Pakistan, do more. After having lost 70,000 people and lost hundreds of billions of dollars in business, doing more was a hollow type of accusation. So you can see if a man stands up and says, look, we know what we are doing. We don't want you interfering with our affairs and undermining, our efforts, which is the big thing that happens in a lot of countries. Even the big corporations, they have a special department whose job it is to go and give money to the rulers in order to bypass the regulation. It's happened in Nigeria. In Nigeria, I think it was Standard Oil or somebody, they paid money to the rulers so that they didn't have to clean up the oil mess. Even today, that whole delta is completely and utterly destroyed because they didn't clean up.
Yeah.
Because the reason was, they said to the government, here's the money, you clean it up. And they went away. Of course, the government is not going to do it. They're going to pocket it and bring the money over to London or wherever. I mean, this is a failure I agree with you of the leadership.
Mm.
And to put in the right leadership is a job in itself, you know. And luckily for Pakistan, I'm really very happy. Although I'm born in India, this is that, the other, but because I lived in Pakistan, I know how things have happened. You know, I mean, I can tell you some little story, for instance. Here, you know, I used to play golf regularly in Karachi, and one of my partners was a pilot, a co-pilot on a plane, which he was flying when General Musharraf was visiting Sri Lanka and coming back. And when the general was coming back and he was the commander-in-chief, this pilot was telling me that they got a call from the control tower as they approached Karachi saying, you can't land. You blocked the runway. Go to India. Because Nawaz Sharif was saying he wanted his own man as commander-in-chief and not Musharraf. And then, of course, when they blocked the runway, the pilot was saying, what should we do now? So the general said, don't worry, make me a call to the corps commander in Malir, this in Karachi, with this 20,000 soldiers there at beck and call. One call and the whole brigade came in, took over the whole airport, arrested all the officials of the tower, control tower, the police, everybody. And then in the next few hours, they took over the Prime Minister's secretariat, arrested him, took over the press. I saw right before, you know, I lived through that. And he was telling me what happened in the aircraft, you know. So a complete and utter sort of mismanagement of power by people who shouldn't be there. And once they're there, it's very difficult to dislodge them unless you have an outside power who can sort of kick them out one way or another, you see? Yeah.
Excellent.
Anyhow, that's insight into Pakistan.
Really interesting.
I learnt a lot. Nimi, you mentioned a program on blasphemy laws on BBC. Was it radio or TV?
It was the TV, Pam, and I thought it was fascinating. It was about the blasphemy laws in Pakistan. It's a series they've done called Storyville.
Oh, I know them. Yes, I'll check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I find it harrowing
sounded-
because, you know, I'm Pakistani by birth, and for me, and Shafiq, you might have a view on it, because when I was born in Karachi and I lived there till I was a teenager. In those days, it was all very open. Religion was not a big thing. No one wore the hijab or anything. It was very open and very secular. But now everything I read about it is the other extreme, which I find really concerning.
Yeah, you know what happened, Nimi, in Pakistan? When Bhutto came in, there was a big radical change in outlook. But then he wanted to stay in power. So he made a deal with the right-wing parties, the religious parties, and caved into their demands of stopping alcohol and doing all sorts of these things that they put in, simply to stay in power. So what transpires is the love of staying in power and not really looking at, if you like, creating a just society. So if you have leadership who can spout forth things but cannot deliver, I think is very suspect. And Bhutto was one of those people who couldn't deliver.
Yeah. And did who was it Zia who brought in the blasphemy laws?
That's right.
Yeah.
Zia brought in the blasphemy laws because he was a very religious person. And he took power after Bhutto and turned the country to the right quite a bit. And that was the time when it became much more religious.
And then also, you say, so with Bhutto, I don't know, but I seem to remember that although he was signing up to all of this, I mean, he himself wasn't a religious person. He, you know, they pretend to be. Yeah, exactly. It's so depressing.
Yeah. No, but
Fascinating.
although I don't mind people having whiskey, because even I think Jinnah had whiskey.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, as I say, for me, the fact that, my recollection, my memories of the country were that it was very open. You could do whatever you wanted to. There was no, as I say, no one wore a hijab. I don't remember anyone wearing hijabs and all of that. And now when we see pictures of all the girls in school who are wearing their hijabs, I think, why, that's not important. What is important is that you're educating all your girls
That's right.
rather than what they're wearing.
You see, the hijab, when I was growing up, nobody wore hijab. The only person I remember growing up having a hijab is the lady who came and taught us the Quran. She came in a burqa. So that's the only person I knew. But where the change came in very dramatically was in 1970, early 73, when the oil sort of prices went up. And Saudi Arabia had bags of money. A lot of people came in from various countries to work there. And of course, they went back with this Wahhabi type of outlook on life. And that's when you started to see a lot of these girls and women walking around in hijab. I've never seen any of my family going around in hijab, or any of
No, exactly.
nobody.
But you know what? This is the same. My friend from Iran says the same thing. She said when she grew up in Tehran, she said her family aren't really very religious, and neither is it any of her friends. They never wore a do they call it hijab there? Now, all the years afterwards, I've been friendly with her all through the 1990s and up to now. And every time she went back to visit her family, she had to wear a hijab, she could go along with all this. She says it's ridiculous. No one she knows wants any of that, and they're just forced to do it, and they hate it. She says she's just so pleased that she's left.
Yeah.
Because they almost have a religious police. But this is another thing, in all these poor countries, why are they wasting so much energy on what women are wearing? Why don't you just sort the bloody countries out? It's infuriating. And in Iran, when I lived in Pakistan, we thought Iran was really forward because, as you say, they were extremely open-minded, westernized, and all the rest of it. So again, it's all sort of gone backwards as far as I can see.
Yeah.
It was like that when I lived in Turkey in the 70s. I never saw a hijab, only if you went to the villages. The village women would wear them, but you'd never see them in the cities. And now, when I go back, I'm shocked, all the university students are wearing them, and yeah.
I think.
Sorry, Pam, you're talking about Iran or
Turkey.
Turkey. Oh, yeah, that's another one, another country which was so, absolutely. It's really interesting. Whoops.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think my battery is about to run out.
This Turkish series called Ethural.
What's it called?
Ethural.
You mentioned it once before. How do you spell that?
It's a Turkish series of the father of the first Ottoman Empire.
Oh no!
How do you spell that? How do you spell that?
Ertugrul. Ertugrul.
Thank you. I'll look for it.
Oh no! What's it on? Is it what channel?
It's on Netflix.
Do you know what channel it's on?
No,
Netflix. Okay.
Netflix. There's about 400 episodes actually, and you'll like it if you get into it.
By the end, you're speaking Turkish.
The other television program I recommend, I don't know if anyone's seen it, is the Murdoch one. Has anyone watched that?
Oh, it was so interesting. You're absolutely right. It was actually mind-boggling, and when you feel that it was actually, you almost feel that the UK was being ruled by an outsider, an Australian man, and he had so much power. Before seeing that documentary, I've been living here since the last 28 years, but I had not realized how much power he had with all the newspapers in his hands, all the media. It was Quite shocking.
They're quite in America as well, so not just the UK.
Yes, it's Fox News and
Yeah.
so I find it really scary because he decided what he wanted, and he did it to the rest of the world. And so we were talking about the leaders in the poor countries, but even the leaders in the rich country are all sort of enabling him to. Have you watched it, Shafiq? Have you watched that program?
No, I haven't. I think it's on Netflix, is it?
No,
it's on the BBC actually. It's on iPlayer.
It was on BBC Two not long ago, a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think
it was called the rise or the decline of the Murdoch dynasty. The rise of the Murdoch dynasty. No. It's quite mind-boggling. It's very interesting.
I could only watch one at a time. I found it so depressing. I couldn't watch it. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I did. And he had Tony Blair in his pocket, didn't he?
He had all of them in his pocket, didn't he?
To get his blessings, right? He flew all the way to Australia, Tony Blair.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, absolutely, he did. Quite right. To his island.
And then is it Murdoch was it Tony Blair is godfather to Murdoch's child?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's so many. I had not realized they were so close. They said Murdoch was such a frequent visitor to 10 Downing Street. I just couldn't believe it either.
And then Rebecca Wade. I didn't. I'm going to watch that again. But when they managed to get away with a lot of the nastiness they did,
incredible.
It was shocking.
Did you not find it's awful because the inquiry? What was the
Leveson?
The Leveson inquiry, and that was so shocking. What happened with all the phone tapping, and they put in at the end of the Leveson inquiry all these recommendations which had to be put in, and none of them had actually been put in place. That's shocking.
Absolutely, and I found myself thinking, why are these people? Some of them, you may remember, who watched it. The ones Watson and the journalist who brought it to light. I would think these people would be in the House of Lords because they were amazing.
I agree with
Whereas
you.
we've got the likes of Ian Botham in because he's a Brexit.
I so agree with you. I thought the same. You're so right, Lily. Yeah,
absolutely. Definitely worth watching. It's amazing. Yeah,
we'll do that. I think the legacy of such decisions, even the decisions of the rule of Tony Blair, I mean, he'll be remembered for the Iraq War, nothing else.
He's
absolutely.
Absolutely. A war criminal, Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll get ready for the next one next Monday.
Thank you.
I'll have to think of what to talk about.
Will it be a bank holiday?
Oh, it's a bank holiday.
Bank holiday?
Yeah.
So in that case, one has to worry about it then. So I won't give a talk then.
And then it's the AGM.
He's not giving.
And Shafiq, it's the AGM the following Monday.
What, in the afternoon, is it?
At 2:00, Julie said.
What time does it finish?
Don't know.
I'm not involved in the AGM. Are you?
No, she sort of, actually, Julie said earlier, it's worth logging in if you can, because they're talking about, many things, COVID, etc. So for all of us who do Zoom, it may be interesting. I wasn't going to, and then I thought, maybe I will see if it's interesting.
Is it next Monday, is it, Nimi?
No, next Monday is bank holiday. It's the following Monday.
But as someone said, we won't be going anywhere on bank holiday. It's just
maybe the people who run these sessions want a break as well.
Yes, maybe they do. Appreciate your hard work, Shafiq.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Well, it gives me something to do.
It's a lot of work, and
I was listening to.
That's great.
Some of these analysts were talking about stocks and shares and how the tech stocks are doing so well despite the pandemic, because it says the society is changing quite rapidly, more rapidly than if this pandemic hadn't come about. So we're becoming much more tech savvy and communicating a lot more and buying and doing all this other stuff online. The world
Absolutely.
has changed. Oh, it's changed quite a lot. Well, have fun. Let me put it this
Thank
way.
you.
Sorry about my long hair. I haven't had my hair cut since the
I love
start
long
of
hair, no
lockdown,
problem.
and I don't intend to have one.
Mhm.
Okay, have fun then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next Monday is the
Thank
holiday, is it, Pam? Next Monday?
That's what I was told on my course, Paul
Might
Plant
be.
course.
Where's
But
my
he was
calendar?
going ahead. We're not going anywhere, so.
Yeah, it's bank holiday.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if next Monday is a holiday or what. 31st? Summer bank
Yes.
holiday. Monday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, no lecture then.
Okay.
I'll send out a message anyway to all the
Delete the bench. Okay, we've done that.
so you can have a free Monday slot for 3 to 4.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not here that afternoon.
Okay, take care and
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.